So systems of equations. So there's going to be multiple equations, and you just have to find the solutions for them. So number one, I'm going to give you two equations. It's going to be x squared equals 2y plus 10, and 3x minus y is equal to 9. The first thing I did was substitution. I solved for this y right here. And you get 3x minus 9. And then from there, I substituted it in to the x squared equation. And you get this orange step right here. Next, I'm going to simplify. First thing I did was I wanted to isolate one of the variables. So I solved for y because it was by itself. I figured it was the easiest variable to solve for. So I added it to the other side. I subtracted the 9. And then you get y equals 3x minus 9. From here, after I have that 3x minus 9, I substituted it in right here for this y. Over here, instead of saying 2y, it says 2 times 3x minus 9. I distributed here to get 6x minus 18. Negative 18 plus 10 is negative 8. So then I subtracted the 6x from both sides. I added the 8 on both sides, and you end up with a quadratic. If you wanted to, you could factor it, or you can use quadratic formula. I used quadratic formula. And you end up with 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 minus 32. That's 4. Square root of 4 is 2. So I got a 2 right here. And it's 6 plus over 2, which is 8 over 2, and 6 minus 2 over 2, which is 4 over 2. So you have 4 and 2 as the x's, but you need the y's. To find the y's, you have to put it back into the y equation right here. So put a 4 in there, you get 3. If you put a 2 in there, you get negative 3. All right, so let's go over this. One interesting thing about this one is if you solved for x on this one, you added y to both sides, it's x is equal to 3 plus y. Now what's cool about this is this 3 plus y is right here. These are the same. So really, if you wanted to, you can rewrite this to be x minus 2 quantity squared plus x squared, because 3 plus y is x equals 4. Now, if you did not do it that way, that's totally fine. If you solved for y and did it that way, you get the same thing. It's just a little bit of a shortcut, kind of, to do it this way. All right, we need to solve for x on this, so I'm going to expand out the x minus 2 quantity squared to be this. If you grid that out, you'll get the yellow here. Plus x squared is equal to 4. Okay, then you're going to get 2x squared from this and this. And the rest of it's 4. Negative 4x plus 4 is equal to 4. That's embarrassing. Okay, if you subtract 4 from both sides, this is a 0. And then you're left with 2x squared minus 4x. So you want to factor out, well, let's factor out 2x. And you get x minus 2 is equal to 0. If you wanted, you could use quadratic formula on the green, but you really don't need to because it's an easy factoring. Set this equal to 0 and solve, so that's x equals 0. Set this equal to 0 and solve, that's 2. So you have your two x's of 0 and 2, but you need a y for each of those. So that's where you're going to want to use your y equation up here. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Well, I guess we have an x equation, but y is equal to x minus 3. So if you wanted to, you can resolve this to say y is equal to x minus 3. So that means that our 0 for x is going to have a negative 3 for y, and our 2 minus 3 is going to be negative 1. So those should be your two answers. So for 3, we have 4x squared plus y squared is equal to 13. And then we have x squared plus y squared is equal to 10. All right, let's go over this. So first thing I noticed is the easiest one to probably substitute for is the y squared, because this y squared right here is by itself. You could substitute for x squared, but then you have to multiply it by 4. So I just kind of wanted to take the easy way out on this one. So what I did is I solved for y squared on this bottom equation right here. So I subtracted off I subtracted off x squared from both sides, so it's 10 minus x squared. And then what I did is once I have this y squared, I threw it back in to this y squared here. Now if you notice, I did not solve for y, because why do that? Everything's in squared, so I'm just looking at the variable as a squared from now on. So I rewrote it to be 4x squared plus 10 minus x squared equals 13. So that's what the orange is right here. The 4x squared minus x squared is 3x squared. The 10 drops down. You can subtract 10 from both sides. You get 3 here. Divide by 3, you get 1. So x squared equals 1. You have to do the square root of both sides, and you should get plus or minus 1 for the x. Okay, but you need the y as well. Okay, well, luckily we have the y equation right here. Well, it's a y squared equation, but we can use that to figure out what our y is. So that's what we're going to do now. So you can do y squared is equal to 10 minus plus or minus 1 quantity squared. Now, I wrote plus or minus 1 because anything squared is going to be positive anyway. So you're going to be left with y squared equals 10 minus 1, because negative 1 squared is 1, positive 1 squared is 1. You're going to be left with y squared equals 9. Square root both sides, you get y is equal to plus or minus 3. So your final answer for this should be, and you can write it like this, you can write it as plus or minus 1 and plus or minus 3. Okay, if you wanted, you can do it this way. If you, another thing you could have done, I don't advise doing this, is you could have wrote, you could have wrote 1 comma 3, negative 1 comma 3, 1 comma negative 3, and then negative 1 comma 3. Oops, I already did that one. Sorry, negative 3. Which is the same thing as what I did in the purple. Okay, if you do plus or minus, it just saves you a bunch of time. This one, it's not going to work on your quiz though, because they're not going to match. This one matches though, because they're all squareds. But one thing you could have done is just subtracted downward. Okay, let me erase everything so it looks a little bit neater. This way is probably the fastest way of doing it, but again, it's not going to help much on your quiz. But if we subtract downward, you get 3x squared. This is 0, is equal to 3. So now if you notice I have 3x squared equals 3, I have the same thing right here in the green. So the rest of it is basically the same solving, but it just kind of shortcuts it by subtracting it off. You will not be able to do that though on your quiz, because they're not going to all line up like that. If you notice the other problems we did, these didn't line up. The x's and the y's didn't line up. Same with this one. This one lines up because there's 2x y squared there. But yes, you can totally do elimination. Let's do x plus y equals 2, and y is equal to x squared minus 4. I'm going to solve for y here. If you graph these two and figure out where they intersect, you can also find the answer that way. I do, you still have to show work though, but it's a good way of checking your work. So for this one, let's actually, I'm going to show you how to do this on your calculator. So I substituted the y in here for this one here. Then I'm going to move everything to one side. So I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. I'm going to add x. So you're going to end up with x squared plus x. And then it's going to be negative 4 minus 2, which is negative 6. Okay. And this one does factor, but you can also use quadratic formula if you want. It's whatever you want. I don't care. However you want to do it. Quadratic formula will always work. Factoring only works sometimes. So that's why I always use what always works kind of a thing. Minus 4 times 1 times negative 6. So that's 25. So it's going to be 1 plus or minus 5 over 2. It's going to be 1 plus 5, which is 6, and 1 minus 5, which is negative 4. So you get your x's to be, what is that, 3 and negative 2? but you got to figure out the y's. Well, luckily we have a y equation. It's just 2 minus x, so we can just do 2 minus each of these. So you end up with, hold on. That's embarrassing. Forgot a negative here. It's negative b. So this should be a -6 and a +2. There we go. Sorry about that. +2. So -3. So it's 2 minus -3 is 5. And then 2 minus 2 is 0. So those are the two answers there. 3, 5, and 2, 0. Okay, here's the next one. Oh, wait, I almost forgot. I want to show you how to do this on the calculator, the previous problem. Okay, pay attention because I'm going to show you how to do this on your calculator real quick. This is good for checking the work, but you still have to show work. If you do not show work, but you use your calculator, I'll still give you a passing grade, but it's the lowest possible passing grade. Because you did the lowest possible thing. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to graph. If you notice, the calculator only does y equals. So I'm going to graph the first one as y equals 2 minus x, and I'm going to graph the other one as x squared minus 4. Okay, and then I'm going to graph it on the screen here. You'll notice there's two solutions right there. The intersection points are the exact same thing as the solutions. So we're going to do second calc 5 because it says intersection right there, intersect. And you just have to move closest to whichever intersection you want, hit enter, where it says guess, and then you end up with 2, 0, which is one of our solutions. And we're going to do the same thing with the other one, second calc 5. And then we're going to move over to the other one here. Enter, enter, and then where it says guess, make sure it's close to that one, hit enter, and you get -3, 5, which is what we got when we actually did all the math. So when in doubt, graph it out. You can check your work that way. All right, let's do this one here. The easiest one to solve for probably here is going to be the x. So I'm going to add y to the other side. So we're going to end up with y plus 1 is equal to x. And I'm going to substitute this in right here for this x right here. So you'll end up with y plus 1 quantity squared plus y squared is equal to 25. I'm going to expand this out by, you can use the grid method. You should get y squared plus 2y plus 1 plus y squared is equal to 25. The rest of it's simplifying and using quadratic formula to solve for y. Once you're done with that, you have to solve for x using the x equation, which is right here. And you should get the answer. Sure. Oops, that's embarrassing. I flip-flopped all those. Forgot I was solving for y. There we go. That's why it's important to check your work. Excuse me. Any questions on what I did there? All right, just to run it down again, first thing I did was I solved for x because I just added the y over to the other side, so it's y plus 1, and then I substituted in for this x right here. And from here I squared it, so it's y plus 1 squared plus y squared equals 25. I expanded it out right here. That's what I'm highlighting. That's the same thing as this part right here. So you can grid it out to get that. Plus y squared, so I added the y squared together to get 2y squared. And then just I subtracted the 25 to both sides, and it's negative 24 over here. You have to use quadratic formula, which is what I did in the blue. I simplified everything to get y is negative 4 and 3. And then I used my x equation from right here. So y plus 1 is equal to x. So it's 3 plus 1 is 4. Negative 4 plus 1 is negative 3. And you end up with the solutions.